and gentlemen, welcome back to this parallel session of the ASICE conference. My name is Pishana Nitipot and I will be the moderator for this session. Each presenter will have 10 minutes for the presentation and 5 minutes for the Q&A session. And now let's begin with our first presentation. The first presentation, Making Studio Assessment Transparent, Developing and Validating an Assessment Frameworks for Architectural Design Education. Please join me welcoming Abdul Muluk bin Abdul Manan.
Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Abdul Muluk from INTI International University. I'm an architect by profession and currently teaching in University Tunku Abdul Rahman. My paper today is about transparent assessment in architecture studio, which address a fundamental challenge in architecture education. How do we make assessment more transparent, equitable, and meaningful in the design studio? The design studio is the pedagogical core of architecture curricula. It's where students integrate theoretical knowledge, technical competencies, creative thinking, and professional judgment in design practice. Unlike conventional lecture-based studio learning feature interactive problem solving, project-based inquiry, and also visual communication and critic-centered pedagogy. Students learn through cycles of design production. As you can see, the sample of students' work at the side of the slides. And consequently, assessment evaluates complex competency like creativity, critical thinking, spatial reasoning, sustainability, awareness, and technical integration. This complexity makes studio assessment particularly challenging. The problem for persistent challenges, let me be specific about the challenges. First, implicit criteria. You see, words like creativity, design quality, innovation are rarely defined. Number two is the critic culture. In architecture, usually students will present their work and the panelists or assessor will give critique, almost like a PhD level assessment, even though this is only an undergraduate student. And number three is inconsistency in the assessor comment. Multiple assessors, because usually during the crit session, we have representative from the academic, from the practice, and also from the stakeholder of the project. And lastly, limited literacy that cannot interpret rubrics and also struggle with feedback and undeveloped development. The theoretical foundation of transparent assessment framework rests on two complementary pillars: constructive alignment and social constructivism. Constructive alignment developed by BICS proposed that effective learning occurs when intended learning outcomes, teaching activities, and assessment tasks are systematically aligned from a transparency perspective, and constructive alignment provides a structural mechanism for making educational expectation explicit. While social constructivism, rooted in Vygotsky's work, argues that knowledge is actively constructed through interaction, dialogue, and collaboration, architecture design studio exemplify this. Knowledge development occur through critique, discussion, observation, and reflection. Like you see in the photo there, that is example of a critique session where panelists from different background came to give critique to students' work. So the 8 tough dimension organized in 2 clusters. You can see there structural constructive alignment and also social constructivism. On the structure side, we have 4 factors from constructive alignment. First, explicit learning outcomes, clearly articulated, observable, measurable competencies communicated to students. The second one is alignment of learning activities, ensuring studio activity directly support intended outcomes. Third, assessment criteria and rubrics, explicit performance indicator that reduce ambiguity and promote consistency. And lastly, feedback alignment, ensuring feedback explicitly connect to criteria and outcomes, enabling students to interpret feedback effectively. As you can see, that is an example of the final work presented by the students. It's encompassing value of aesthetics, technical, sustainability, and all the other factors that is required from the students. And on the social constructivism, studio critique makes assessment reasoning explicit and connects comments to criteria. Peer learning provides exposure to diverse perspectives and build shared understanding of quality. Reflective practice through journals and self-assessment enable internalization of expectation. And finally, assessment dialogue, the conversation, tutorial, and discussion that facilitate clarification and mutual understanding. Similar to art subject, architecture also have dedicated studio for the students to do the cross-learning activities. The methodology for this research, this is a conceptual paper. So with preliminary empirical illustration, the literature synthesis covered 3 major databases over 4 decades. As you can see here, phase 1 is the literature synthesis, phase 2 semi-structured interviews, and quality and rigors. From the preliminary findings of our pilot studies, we find out that all the tough dimensions is supported. Number 1 is explicit learning outcomes. As you can see, these are some examples of the comment given by the respondents. When I provide detailed rubric before the project starts, students produce work that more clearly address sustainability and spatial organization criteria. And example number 2 is student here push this further but don't know what that means for their grade. So meaning that all these very subjective comment given by the panelists usually will not help the student in developing further their design. Beyond supporting of these 8 criteria, 2 additional themes emerge. Institutional policy alignment. 3 participants noted that university grading policy sometimes conflict with studio-based transparency practices and digital assessment tools. Using management system like Canva to enhance transparency. It's like sharing the whole studio, sharing the Canva documents so they can cross-learn with each other. These are the conceptual model of the transparent assessment network. As you can see here, the subject, the line of the structure and social dimensions are not separate. All are connected with each other, and the key contribution of this transparency isn't simply providing information, it's an emergent property of the interaction between structure and social participation. It's a process of meaning making that occurs throughout the studio experiences. This is fundamentally different way of thinking about transparency. So how does studio assessment challenges? Subjectivity and inconsistency will be eliminated by the four things that we highlighted here. Like the challenge number one, subjectivity and inconsistency. The solution is staff does not eliminate professional judgment, make assessment reasoning explicit, legitimize judgment through transparency, and align outcome to explicit criteria. And the goal is to consistent yet professionally grounded assessment. And you can read all the other challenges and how this research address it. These are the tough implementation checklists. We have the before, during, and after. So you can look through these because the time's out, so I have to rush through the presentation. And as you can see, the practical implementations of the key principle of TIFE, which is alignment, transparency, dialogue, and fairness.
Sorry for this interruption, but it's time up already.
Yeah, I will move to the conclusions.
Oh, I'm sorry, but we have to run due to our schedule.
Okay, question and answer session.
Now, thank you, Mr. Abdul Muluk bin Abdul Manan, for your presentation. And now we will move to Q&A session. And are there any questions from the audience? Okay. Wait a minute. The microphone is going.
It's very interesting. So I would like to know about your conclusion, please.
Okay, the conclusion is transparency is not just about providing information. It's about creating condition for understanding to develop through both clear structure and meaningful social participation. So meaning that transparency is not in just one way, it's also both ways, from the creator and also from assessor. Does that answer your questions? Thank you.
Okay, another question.
Hi, Mr. Muluk.
Yes.
How are you? Good?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, I just want to double confirm. What is the research methodology that you're using for your research? Sorry, research design.
Delphi method. I'm using Delphi method. So there will be 3 stages of questionnaires from experts. The first round will be 30 experts that will be appointed internationally. Because for for this paper, we only have 6 samples. As you can see, these are the future directions. Yeah. Because one of the limitations is actually we only have this for the 6 experts are actually from Malaysian University, from UPM, UCAM, and UTM. But for the international, we already got people from the Philippines and Indonesia.
Okay.
And
those are your respondents, right?
Yes, my respondents.
Okay, because you have clearly stated developing and validating.
Yes.
So my question is, why not you use the development and design research, the DDR method? Because it will be a step by step in how you identify whether there is a need to have this framework. right? So that will be the first phase. Then the second phase, you will develop and design. And then the third phase, you will evaluate. So it will be more systematic. And I think it will be more appropriate rather than just a Delphi study to develop and validate a framework.
Yes, of course, that will be my full paper for my PhD thesis. But for this particular paper, it's a conceptual paper. So we are just touching on the transparent assessment framework first. My second paper will be probably the topic that you suggested.
Are there any further questions?
Maybe the number 4, you see that? The empirical testing, multiple institution, evaluate impact of assessment literacy, evaluation judgment, student engagement, and perceptions of fairness. So that will be, so actually I'm targeting based from my main research, I'm going to produce minimum of 6 paper.
Okay, because one of the questions that will be asked by examiner, this is your PhD, right?
Yes, correct.
So one of the questions that examiner might ask, okay, what is the need to have this framework? So the need analysis need to be there. That should be the first thing that you should do. So maybe you can think about it and see what can be done. Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
Are there any further questions? If there are no further questions, thank you so much for your
Thank you, everyone.
presentation and discussion. And now let us proceed to the next presentation. The next presentation title is Towards a Third Generation Cognitive Linguistic by Mr. Jason Reeves. Please join me in welcoming.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming. Swaddy krap to people who are online. This presentation is about the past, the present, and the future, and it's fundamentally a linguistic moving into science paper. So it'll start out talking about cognitive linguistics, because I started out in stylistics and cognitive poetics. And then it'll move on to a framework which is moving towards a third generation cognitive linguistics. First generation cognitive linguistics you might know as Chomsky type, which I consider more mathematics than linguistics, but some people consider MIT consider linguistics. So the first slide will tell us about the 3 different types of cognitive linguistics we had. So in the 60s and 70s, some of us will remember the debates that people like Foucault, and I like Foucault doing discourse analysis, I will disclose now, with people like Chomsky. And Chomsky and MIT, funded by the Pentagon for the majority of his career, as he admitted himself, came up with a decontextualized form from part of Saussure's, Lang, and Perot. And that type of linguistics was very successful at the time. However, his students, we called it first generation cognitive linguistics. And I'll give a quote from Chomsky. A grammar is essentially a theory of linguistic competence, a hypothesis concerning the speaker hearer's knowledge of his language. And you'll see that is a very narrow space of what we might think linguistics to be today. For example, there's no social cultural strong element because it's decontextualized. And there's no element that strongly links to embodiment, so ourselves and how our bodies are affected. And there's no element that links to society and culture. So that might be considered quite an out-of-date idea. And indeed, very soon after he started his ideas, he became very defensive and started to talk about, oh, we'll never know because cognitive science and brain science will never develop to the degree. Unfortunately for him, the next 50 years, brain science massively developed, and we got an awful lot of answers telling us things regarding how our brains actually work, and that there isn't a little piece of our brain that only does language. It's far, far, far more complex than that alone. Second generation was fundamentally, you had people like sociologists, people like Gumpez, a lot of people, these people were University of California people, and a lot of them were ex-students, not the sociologists, but people like George Lakoff were ex-students of Chomsky. And they saw some problems with some of the linguistic ideas, and in so much as they couldn't see how decontextualization could link to a human being in a culture and offer you language. So that was problematic for those students who went on to develop second generation cognitive science. And you've got great people like Gibbs and Tami, who are very, across many different fields, who've done a lot of excellent work over the last 20, 30 years in cognitive linguistics. And it's a very, very interesting area. However, a lot of the area is done in, should I say, English literature. And we have a lot of models like mental models, and we have a lot of models like blending by Fournier and Turner, which are very common models. And they're great for English literature, but do they tell us how meaning is generated for a person in a culture, in the real world, on a day-to-day basis? They're probably focusing on narratives and novels, which is something slightly different. So the third generation is something I'm proposing, and I'm not suggesting for 1 second I will get anywhere near achieving it in the next 3 lifetimes, but it would be nice to outline a basic framework which would take us towards this type of idea. So linguistics, as I see it, is basically the study of language, and language requires 3 elements. And those elements will be people and cultures, and it has to be diachronic, so it has to be over time. And none of these were in Chomsky's first generation. They would decontextualize mathematics. So this was problematic for a lot of people. Sociologists would put, one of their methodologies would be to put a microphone under a group of people speaking, and they saw no evidence of any of Chomsky's theories ever being held anywhere. So it kind of went out of fashion, and second generation cognitive linguistics became very popular. However, 20, 25, 30 years later, it's really stalling. We don't see a lot of movement in second generation cognitive linguistics. Science, as you know, is systematic exploration of hypotheses, where we're really looking towards testable hypotheses which can be repeated and proven, and if they have a predictable element, that makes them even stronger. So we want science in our linguistics, in our third generation linguistics. Neurobiology, which has increased massively, is the area where we will look at our, could be nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and embodied experientialness in a massive way. And sociology is the area where we're looking at culture and people. This is a type of idea that comes out of some second generation cognitive linguistics. And you can see it's fairly crude in the way it maps across ideas. It's not physically possible neurobiologically. It's a concept. And that concept works very well in English literature, but it's impossible to work within neurons. When we start looking at this award-winning, Nobel Prize-winning research by Eric Kandel, this would be a 5 neural network, which is the simplest type of neural network, which allows habituation, stabilization, and inhibition, and these type of ideas. And over here is a single cell, but this is a massively simple version of what a simple cell could be. A simple cell is less than 1% of what a single cell is doing. Just within the neuron's nucleus is far more complex than this. So if you put that through that, multiply by hundreds of thousands in a neural connection, we're getting to something that's quite complex. And then we've got so many social theories that where do we begin? Where do we start with our different social theories? It's very difficult to know which ones we would link together to have linguistics along with neurobiology in a way that all I'm suggesting is plausible to be a framework. So I'm not suggesting an answer. I'm suggesting it's worthwhile, now we know so much about neurobiology, to offer up a plausible framework which can include that in our embodied and experiential, situated in a culture, self and group linguistics, so that that becomes a full potential framework that many different disciplines could look at, robustly attack and improve over time. So how do we create this? And that's an absolutely superb question, and I will certainly not be answering it now. I am working on a paper where you will get some kind of answer towards that, and that paper might come on this conference, or it might come to a specialist type of journal. But what we've fundamentally got is, in this short presentation, I've only introduced the different ideas and where we're trying to go to. And where we're trying to go to is where we can have a framework where people from different disciplines can agree that, a neurobiologist, a psychologist, a cognitive scientist, a linguist, they can look at that framework and say, it's plausible that we can see how meaning is generated via that framework. That's the only place I'm trying to get to. So thank you very much for listening. I realize I've massively simplified some quite complex ideas, but we had quite a short amount of time. So if you have any questions, 1, I would be shocked, and 2, I'd be very happy to hear them. Any questions? If my students don't ask questions, they'll be getting an F, so that's just a by the way.
Thank you so
Your
much.
students too, I don't know why you're laughing. Yes. Could we bring the microphone over to these students? Because I'm sure they can manage a question between them on this very simple topic. By the way, I'm from Silicon. I probably should have mentioned before.
And
I'm
so
called Jason.
will ask the question.
Okay, I have a question. Since you stated that the theoretical framework should develop over time, then which framework do you think is the most suitable and plausible for this research?
The first framework has pretty much been accepted as wrong, although many people still follow it, MIT, for example. But to decontextualize and have no people, no culture, and no language itself, real language, seems to me very hard. to justify any suggestion that there's real meaning there. The second framework, cognitive linguistics, has been much more successful and has worked for the last 20 or 30 years. And the third framework is rubbish I'm working on, which I hope that it would, because neurobiology has become so strong, and I've worked on it the last 15 years as a linguist, that I hope that there might be a way that we can connect them together with sociology. Because second generation cognitive linguistics says we're embodied and experiential. Our bodies and our bodies' drives and our bodies' motion. And one thing to remember is movement generates meaning. So when you look through a text, each word you're moving and you're generating meaning. And our bodies, within each neuron has a nucleus which is permanently moving. It's generating new chemical processes. So that in itself is generating meaning. We have no choice as human beings. And the experiential is us in cultures and what experiences we've had. So I'm hoping number 3 will give a kickstart to number 2, which has proven successful, but has really slowed in the last 5-10 years. Thank you for your question. Good question. It wasn't that good a question. There's no need for that much clapping. But it was a good question. Ladies, do you have a question? Because you're always very talkative in class. Sorry, this lady here. There's more.
Sorry, I got a bit confused with your last point about doing the framework. Essentially, with that framework, what is the challenges it's going to solve in terms of cognitive science and language?
If we looked at it in the most simple part, we don't know how, it's called the binding problem. We don't know how meaning comes together from our potentially different dendrites, from potentially our hippocampus, which is working like a reference library, trying to get different parts of our memory together. We don't know how that happens. So there's a massive area that we just don't know. So I'd hope to build more neurobiology in it, which has to be situated in a culture so that we could answer the ultimate question, really, which is the binding question, which perhaps suggests this is a tad ambitious.
Okay.
But thank you. It's a very good question.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation. And
I know it's
for the
time's
next
up. Just
question.
very quick one. It's not a question, just a suggestion, if you don't mind, because I do.
I haven't heard it yet, so I don't know whether I mind or not.
So it seems that you want to develop a framework. Am I right?
I would say move towards a plausible framework, not suggest a full framework.
Okay.
I'm not competent to do that.
So it's like a prototype.
Yes.
Okay.
Like a prototype that people much, much smarter than me could move forward and test, like Raymond Gibbs and people like that.
So it's just my suggestion. One of the research design that you may want to use, as I suggested to the earlier speaker, is a design and development research, DDR. So you may want to explore about DDR and how it can help you to systematically and organizing your ideas until you be able to develop the prototype. And towards the later stage, you may even evaluate your framework that you have developed. Thank you so much.
I'll consider I presume it's some type of software or some type of methodology which can help you to bring ideas together. And certainly with these many complex ideas, something like that could be useful. Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much for listening and suffering the pain. It's over now, and good luck to the next speaker.
Thank you so much for your presentation and discussion. And now let us proceed for the next presentation. The next title presentation is Designing Inclusion from the Start, Usability and Satisfaction with a UDL-Based Micro-Learning Module among Pre-Service teachers in Malaysia. The presenter is Nurul Salwana. Please join me welcoming.
Thank you very much. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So this is my topic for today, designing inclusion from the start, usability and satisfaction with a UDL-based micro-learning module among pre-service teachers in Malaysia. Okay, so well, I just want to bring you to the idea of UDL first. What is UDL? The Universal Design for Learning. So if any of you less familiar with UDL, it is one of the most approach that we currently have in addressing variability in the classroom, where we don't want to wait until the problems happen. Okay, we want to start designing the lesson before the problems happen in the class. So when students struggles in class, yes, we most of the time, most of the teacher will wait until the problems happen, and then we will start going to provide accommodation to the students. Okay, what happen if we can actually design something? Okay, remove the barriers before it's actually happened. So why these studies matters? If I can just bring you. Malaysian pre-service teachers enter practicum with moderate UDL awareness, but limited ability to translate the knowledge into inclusive lesson. Okay, so what happened if I ask my students, especially the pre-service teacher, what is the UDL principle? They can answer it and score 100% for all the theories related to UDL. But there is a gap, basically from knowing to doing gap, which is something that I want to share with all of you today. So this research basically traced that gap from need analysis through expert validated module design to the usability and satisfaction evidence from the 4-week LMS. LMS is learning management system that we use in our university. Micro-learning intervention delivered to 80 pre-service teachers. So maybe a little bit background of what I'm doing. I'm currently teaching in one of the private university in Malaysia, and one of our main focus is to train the pre-service teachers, and we have around 4 specialization, which is teaching English as second language, TESOL, ECE or early childhood education. We have special needs education and also guidance and counseling. So I want you to see who is this actually about. So if you look into all of the pictures here, these are all the pre-service teachers from our study. They're basically running a mock teaching session. They look and implement UDL in the classroom. Okay, and this is the study that I want to describe later. So let's look into what we know so far. Okay, there's thousands of literature related to UDL, Universal Design for Learning, but my focus is just on how much pre-service teachers know on how to implement UDL in the classroom. So if you look into a few studies that I managed to extract here, UDL in teacher preparation, pre-service teacher worldwide report weak theory-heavy exposure to UDL. Okay, so it's the same thing with the Malaysian context as well. It's remained understudied. And then if you look into the micro-learning and LMS, it's quite common now for all the university to use LMS. And even in our private place, in our private university, we also have our own LMS. So this module basically is delivered using short self-paced unit, which actually help to lower cognitive loads. And it's also to extend access beyond class time, because we want to make sure that it's flexible enough for everybody, that you don't have to just go through the module when you're in a class. And we also use TAM and the use of the questionnaire. This is basically on the third phase of our study, where we want to understand and to get the input from the participants. Either they know or not, or they can implement or not, or they can design the lesson plan or not after they went through the module. Okay, so let's just look into the phase 1, a quick one, the need analysis part. Okay, as I mentioned just now, it is 3 phases of study. So in the first need analysis, we go and ask the teacher, how much you know about UDL? So if you look into the data here, 80 students, 80 pre-service teacher, and there is a moderate, just 51 or 51% only. So there is like, uneven awareness on what is UDL. And you can see the SNE student or specialist education basically outperform ECE, TESOL, and GNC. Okay? So why? Because SNE students, they know about the policy, they know about the approach, they heard about differentiate instruction, for example. So of course, when we talk about UDL, for them, it's like, oh, a new thing, but almost similar with what they have learned before. And then in terms of lesson planning, we ask them to design a lesson plan. So we understand that from all these 80 pre-service teacher, when we look into their mean, okay, the mean score, after we evaluate the lesson plan, we got the mean score, and we look that it is just on the emerging or developing and no plan reach exemplary level yet. Okay, so we know that there is a problem with how they design their lesson plan. And then in a phase 2, we know that there is a problem that we need to fix. So what we do is we go and call all the 18 expert panels. We ask them to review the module that we actually has developed from literature review, from the existing models or modules that already there. Okay, but we want to make it so that it will be compatible to our targeted pre-service teacher and localized to Malaysian context. So it is using the FDM consensus where there's a 54 item rated using the triangular fuzzy number, and we can see we can actually have quite a good number. And from 54 item, only 2 items rejected. And then we come up with the module and we start with the 4-week intervention. So what happened next? So this is just a glance of what is DDR all about. I think just now we talked about DDR. So it is like, this is the framework that I use for this study. And this is what we want to observe basically, or what is this presentation all about, will be the phase 3, the evaluation part. Let's go and look into usability by dimension. We use adapted use USE questionnaire. And you can see right here, we have quite a good number with how the participants use the module and how they satisfy with the module. And majority, you can see that pre-service teachers did not just tolerate this module, they found it genuinely valuable. Okay, and if you look into the overall result for the evaluation part, okay, we can see that overall usability mean is 4 out of 5. Okay, and when it comes to the perceived usefulness, most of them agree that, when you accept something, okay, of course you want to use it in your practice. And there is also like, one item which specifically I want to mention, item A8. Content was relevant to my teaching practice. And for this, okay, most of the participants score 5, okay, to indicate that they are all agree that this module basically helps them a lot in how they should design their lesson plan and how it will help them later for their practicum. And maybe if I can just bring you to the implication for this study. So you can see right here that these are all the participants for this study, and they are basically trying to explain to the audience during the study how much they understand about UDL, which is a very good thing to see, okay, because it is always like the direction that we want to go next. When we talk about inclusion, inclusion is not just in theory. And we know that inclusions all start with how we design the lesson plan. I mean, we can talk about inclusion, how to put everyone together, but imagine you have 25 students in front of you. We have 2 with autism and some of them with language barrier. How we are going to make sure that everyone basically can learn together. It all starts with how we design our lesson. And this is just the photo from our study, where these are all the pre-service teacher and they are trying to explain how much they understand about UDL and also to show how they use UDL, okay, in their lesson. And then this is just the summary for my study. LMS micro-learning, okay. I think it is important too for how we design and put the LMS, okay, because we want to make sure that everyone will be able to access to the content and they have the flexibility to do it. And for teacher educators, the module basically offers a ready blueprint for embedding UDL directly into practicum preparation. And I hope that the same teachers who know on how to design for everyone will be the next generation of teachers that understand on how to implement inclusive education in the classroom. I think that's it from me for today. And I open for any question.
Thank you so much for your presentation. There's a question for you.
All right, very interesting study, but I just want to highlight about your intervention week. You mentioned 4 weeks, right?
Yes.
But normally when we have the intervention, at least we need to have eight weeks. So do you foresee any, why justification, why only 4 weeks?
Okay, all right. Okay, so the reason why we only conduct it for 4 weeks is because we actually quite clear with the direction of this intervention. We just want them to be able to plan, okay, and design their lesson plan. And all of the student and the participant, they basically have the skill on how to design the lesson plan, but without embedding the UDL approach. So we actually quite save a lot of time in preparing the student on how to create the lesson plan. So the 4 weeks of this micro-learning using the LMS, basically, can just enough for them to know on how to embed the UDL principle into their lesson. And I'm not sure, but one thing that I noticed, most of the students, sometimes, even though we say it for 4 weeks, they can just finish it in 1 day. Okay, so, but the 4 weeks is just enough because it's like a prerequisite for every stage. They have to make sure they complete and submit all the assessment and do all the interactive activity before they move to the next one. That's how we actually control to make sure that they don't finish it within 1 week. Yes. Thank you. Another question?
If there are no further questions, thank you so much for your presentation and discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we are going to have a short break time, and please enjoy and relax, and we will come back at 2:05. Thank you so much.
At ASICE2026, we explore how creative actions breathe new life into our heritage. Here in our BA program in English at the Faculty of Archaeology, we are redefining the modern-day curriculum. We don't just teach English, but we also provide the linguistic key to digital humanities, where language meets data to uncover hidden patterns of our history. Our focus is the human-digital synthesis. By merging innovation with creativity, we transform education into the powerful methodology for cross-cultural research. We use the English language as a global bridge, ensuring that our arts and heritage remain visible, relevant, and sustainable in an increasingly digital landscape. Step into the future of cross-cultural discovery. We look forward to seeing you at ASICE 2026.
Discover the soul of humanity with the Faculty of Archaeology, Silpakorn University. At the Faculty of Archaeology, we believe that true innovation stems from interdisciplinary synergy. As Thailand's only faculty dedicated to the profound study of humanity, from advanced excavation to ancient languages, we bridge the past and the future through the power of culture and language. As the primary host of ASICE 2026, we are honored to work alongside our esteemed partner, International University, Malaysia, and the Princess Mahachakri Sirinthorn Anthropology Center. Together, we are creating a global platform where heritage meets digital humanities to foster sustainability in education and the arts. We invite you to be part of this inspiring academic journey. On behalf of the Faculty of Archaeology, Silpakorn University, I look forward to welcoming you all to ASICE 2026 this August.
As the co-host and the official venue partner, the Princess Mahachakri Sirinthorn Anthropology Center is honored to welcome you to ASICE 2026, a platform.
Okay, a very good afternoon to all of you. All right, so I'm the last presenter for today, actually. All right, lucky me. All right, so my topic for today, all right, for my presentation, okay, is about the parent-child, teacher-child, and parent-teacher relationships as determinants of preschoolers' social emotional competence. Now, this study is actually conducted by my student, all right, so she has completed her study already, so that's the reason why also I'm here to present as the paper for that thesis that's been conducted by my student. So she is already graduated and she is now in China. Okay, so about this study, or in short, we call it as a PCR, right? Parent-child relationship, TCR, teacher-child relationship, and parent-teacher, PTR, parent-teacher relationships. All right, so these 1, 2, 3, they are actually the determinants for the preschoolers or the preschool children in terms of their social emotional competence. Sorry. So to start with my presentation, right, I will, you can see the overview of the presentation roadmap. So I will start with the introduction, which will include the background, the problem, the gaps, objectives, and questions, and then followed by the literature review. And number 3 is the methodology of the research. Number 4, results. 5, discussion. Okay. Now, the background and the context, that is the introduction part. Okay, you see here, all right, social emotional competence, SEC, which actually there are 4 elements there, which consist of self-awareness, self-management, relationship skills, responsible decision-making. They are actually the foundation driver of the academic achievement, of the mental health, and also of the long-term life outcome. So you see, they are actually very important and essential. So that is also one point why this study was conducted, especially in China. So if you see the SEC there, all right, the concept of SEC was first introduced and advanced by Daniel Goleman in 1994. It's very old, all right? It's very old theory actually, but it's still very relevant until today. Why? One of the things that I want you to know is that our first keynote speaker yesterday was talking about love, right? So this is about, between teachers, between parents, and also the children. So you see why it is very crucial for us to see this matter. So through the establishment of the collaborative for academic, social, and also the emotional learning, which actually it is the questionnaire, all right, which is called CASTLE. So this is also a questionnaire where some of the items there are extracted to look into this study, okay? And then the preschool years, they are the sensitive period for the SEC, okay? In terms of development, and also they can shape primarily through relationships with PCR, TCR, and coordinated through the PTR, okay? And China, now in China, this student of mine was actually conducting the study looking into China's urban-rural disparities, right? So meaning that he's looking into the rural and also the urban preschools, all right, in China, in parenting resources, teacher qualification, and homeschool. Sorry, there's a typing error there. Homeschool communication may shape these pathways differently by residents. So looking at the location, okay? And problem statement. So normally research will start with a problem treatment. The one, of course, no, we cannot deny about that. So prior research treats parent-child and teacher-child relationships as separate influences on children's development. And empirical work that integrates PCR, TCR, and also PTR within a single model and test whether they form a sequential chain. So this remains scarce, meaning that not many studies have done on this, right, particularly outside the Western context. Yes, if Western context, we can see quite a lot of it. They are conducting this kind of study. But in countries like Asia, right, even in Malaysia, also we can't really see many studies on this. So that is also the purpose. Why? Okay, so and findings here, it remains inconclusive regarding whether children from economically disadvantaged rural areas, they can exhibit systematically lower levels of social emotional competency, all right, compared to their urban counterparts. Okay, so due to that, okay, it may reflect contextual differences in caregiving practices in terms of how parents, all right, take care or look after their children, how teachers educate the children, I mean the preschool children especially. So these things will reflect to how is it that this research or the PTR, the PCR, all right, and also the teacher-parent relationship becomes very crucial. Okay, so this study asks, how do PCR, TCR, and PTR jointly and sequentially shape preschoolers' SEC? And thus, this relational architecture differ from urban and rural children in Shandong province. So the study was conducted in Shandong province, actually, right? And You see the research objective here consists of 4, okay? To look into this this matter, right? To examine the associations among PCR, TCR, PTR, and preschoolers SEC in Shandong Province, China. So you can see number 1 there, RO1 is to determine the level. This one is just to see the level in terms of mean, okay? Of PCR, TCR, PTR, and SEC among the preschool children. And then number 2 here to examine the urban area residence base differences in PCR, TCR, PTR, and SEC. And RO3 to examine the direct relationship among PCR, TCR, PTR, and SEC. And number 4 to identify the mediating and chain mediating roles of TCR and PTR between PCR and SL. So this one is actually about the model fit. Okay, so using the model fit. All right, so on above there it's using the SPSS actually. And then, so you can see here the RQs. So it's aligned, right, with the RO. So I'm not going to read that. Now you see the literature review. Now, there are 2 theories, right, used for this study. One is about the attachment theory, all right, introduced by Bowlby 1969 and Ainsworth 1978. Okay, so this is about attachment theory. And number 2 is the bioecological system theory by Bronfenbrenner and Morris 2006. Okay, so together, the PCR should shape SEC both directly and indirectly through TCR, through PTR, and through a TCR-PTR chain. Okay, so when you look at this, looking at the structural model fit, all right, where later on the hypothesis, right, that are developed for this study, all right, can be, you can see the direct or the indirect pathways of it. So you can see from here, this is kind of the conceptual framework together actually with the theoretical framework. So I combine it together, okay? So what we can see from here for TCR scale, right? So we have the scale short form, which is STRSSF by Pianta 2001, okay? And then the PCR, we're looking at the elements of closeness and conflict. Okay, TCR, yes, the same there. And then social management, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision making, which I mentioned earlier just now in the first slide. All right, and then the TR is the joining and the communication. So those are the aspects or the components or even the elements that is being investigated in this study. And then the methodology. Using the mixed method, of course, right? And then it's from the explanatory sequential mixed method design. But then it's more dominant to the quantitative, okay? It's about more or less 80% quantitative and another 20% is of the qualitative to get the findings, right? So, of course, 3 phases. And the first phase is to analyze the data for the quantitative. The second phase is the qualitative. And then the third phase is to integrate both the quantitative and the qualitative data. All right, so that the findings will how to call it, can be revealed, right? The findings based on the quantity and the qualitative data. Okay. And then you can see here the participants, right, or these respondents all together, right? If you see the valid respondents, there are 559, quite a number of students, right? And then there are from 6 kindergartens, 3 from urban area, and another 3 from the rural area. And using the 4 validated scales used, right, the questionnaire just now, which is combined, right, and to ensure that it is validated, okay, to ensure that the findings are also valid, okay. And then 10 participants are involved or participating for the interview, which is actually the semi-structured, right, interview. So the instrument just now, which mentioned here, is the child parent-relationship scale, student-teacher relationship scales SF, parent-teacher relationship scale, and develop student strength assessment. So the 4 validated scales which are used for this study. And these are the results. Okay, so if you see the first research objective, all right. So you can see here, right. Overall, all 4 constructs fall in a moderate to high range 5-point scale. Communication is PTR's strongest facet. Self-management is SEC's weakest. So if you see from here, all right, they are the mean. So PCR mean 3.9, closeness high, conflict low. Okay, TCR 3.93, closeness high, also conflict low. PTR 4.21, communication and also joining. Okay, and SEC M, that's medium. The mean is 3.84. It's about social awareness highest and self-management lowest. Okay, so you can see the level from there, right? So these are the mean that can show for PCR, TCR, PTR, and SEC. And then the differences between the urban and the rural areas. Okay, so from here, can see that differences here. Independent sample test is sample t-test is used, and urban children score significantly higher than rural children on every construct. Right? When we look into the p-value, which is less than 0.05. Okay, so right, p-value less than 0.01 for PCR, TCR, and PTR, and then p-value less than 0.44 for overall SEC. So there is a smaller gap there actually, right? And no significant urban-rural gap in self-awareness, social awareness, or relationship skills sub-dimensions. That is, the gap concentrates in select SEC domains. So meaning that, time's up, you mean? Oh, sorry, time's up. So, okay, you can see the result. But then, can I continue a bit on the limitations or the conclusion? No, okay. Sorry for that.
Okay. I'm sorry to say it's time.
Question.
What is it? What is the question?
Can you explain the conclusion?
Or the conclusion? Okay, sorry. So now I'm given the time to look at the conclusion, all right? Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. So,
Um, I think you have 4 research objectives, am I right?
Yes, yes, correct.
Okay, so relating to the third research objectives, is the hypothesis is accepted or is it
The hypotheses are positive significant, actually.
significantly positive relationship?
Yes, it's for all the 4 constructs. Constructs, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So did you compare the hypothesis between the rural and urban areas?
Actually, comparing and in terms of the relationship there is not really significant difference. Okay, but when you see the mean, the level, then it's different, a bit different, but it's not that significant. Okay.
What are some of the limitation of your studies?
Pardon?
Limitation of your studies.
Okay, my limitation is not there anymore. Hold on. I not it's there. So these are hold. So this is the limitation, right? So of course, because it's a single city, because it's only in Shandong, okay? Linyi is actually kind of district, okay? But then it's a Shandong province, and then it's using cross-sectional, okay? So one time at one point, okay? And then sibling and peersonships were not included, of course, and the internationally developed scales may not fully capture culturally specific constructs based on China itself. All right, so that's the limitation. Okay, I think that's all. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, okay, for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation and discussion. To the end of this session, on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank all presenters, attendees, and our presentation judge for their participants and contribution. Thank you very much, and we wish you a pleasant day. This session is now officially closed. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, everybody. Just for the information, all the presenter will be here for award ceremony at 2:50, and see you later on at 2:50. Thank you.